Good morning. I'm Stephen Leake. I'm an elder at First Presbyterian Church in Mesquite, Texas, and I'm also the teacher of the Discipleship Sunday School class there. Today we're continuing with our study of the Gospel of John, and we're studying the raising of Lazarus, which is in chapter 11 of the book of John. I'd like to remind you that our curriculum is based upon the daily Bible study series by Professor William Barclay, and that we're also using the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible for our scripture texts. So let's get started this morning. Our first reading is John 11:28 through 33. Now, when we last left Jesus, he was speaking with Martha, and this continues in this particular passage of Scripture. When she had said this, she went back and called to her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here, and he is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in her house, consoling her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and also moved. Martha went back to the house to tell Mary that Jesus had come. She wanted to give the news to her secretly without letting the other visitors know, because she wanted Mary to have a moment or two alone with Jesus before the crowds engulfed them. But when the visitors saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they immediately assumed that she'd gone to visit the tomb of Lazarus. It was the custom, especially for women, for a week after burial, to go to the tomb to weep on every possible occasion. Mary's greeting to Jesus was exactly the same as that of Martha. If only Jesus had come in time, Lazarus would still be alive. Jesus saw Mary and all the sympathizing crowd who had followed her. Now, we must remember that this would be no gentle shedding of tears. It would be almost hysterical wailing and shrieking, for it was the commonly held view of the time that the more unrestrained the weeping, the more honor it paid to the deceased. Now we have a problem of translation. The word which the Revised Standard Version translates as deeply moved in spirit comes from the Greek verb emblemasta. It is used 3 other times in the New Testament. In the 3 other stories, it means to rebuke, to give a stern order. Some people wish to take it in that way and would translate it, Jesus was moved to anger in his spirit. But why anger? It suggested that the display of tears by the Jewish visitors in Bethany was sheer hypocrisy, and that artificial grief made Jesus angry. It's possible that this was true of the visitors, although there's no indication that their grief was fake. But it certainly was not true of Mary, and it can hardly be right here to take emblemasta as anger. In his book, The Four Gospels, E.V. Rue translates, "He gave way to such distress of spirit as made his body tremble." With this, we're getting closer to the real meaning. In ordinary classical Greek, the usual usage of embrasthei is of a horse snorting. Here it must mean such deep emotion seized Jesus that an involuntary groan was wrung from his heart. It's one of the most precious things in the gospel. Jesus entered into human sorrow so deeply that his heart was wrung with anguish. We must remember that this was written for Greeks and that this would be an incredible statement to them. John had written so that we might see the mind of God in Jesus. And the primary characteristic of God to the Greeks was apathy, the inability to feel any emotion. The Greeks believed in an isolated, passionless, and compassionless God. What a different picture Jesus gave. He showed us a God whose heart is wrung with anguish. The greatest thing Jesus did was to bring us the good news of a God who cares. Our next scripture reading is John 11:34 through 44. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of a blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Now we come to the last scene. Once again, we are shown the picture of Jesus wrung with anguish as he shared the anguish of the human heart. To the Greek reader, that little sentence, "Jesus wept," the one that we love so much, would be quite astonishing. The tomb had no door, but in the front of the opening ran a groove in which was set a great stone like a cartwheel that was rolled across the entry to seal it. Jesus asked that the stone be removed. Martha thought that Jesus wished to look upon the face of his friend for the last time. She pointed out that Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. And it was a Jewish belief that the spirit hovered around the deceased for 4 days, seeking re-entry. But after 4 days it left, for the face of the deceased was so decayed that it could not be recognized. So when Jesus spoke his command, death was powerless to oppose, and Lazarus came forth. It's weird for us to think of that bandaged figure staggering out of the grave. Jesus told them to unbind the hampering grave clothes and wrappings and let him go. Now there are certain things to note here. First, Jesus prayed. The power which flowed through him was not his, it was God's. Miracles, said theologian F.L. Godlet, are just so many answered prayers. Second, Jesus sought only the glory of God. He did not do this to glorify himself. When Elijah had his epic contest with the prophets of Baal, he prayed, "Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so that this people may know you, O Lord, our God." 1 Kings 18:37. Everything Jesus did was due to the power of God and designed for the glory of God. How different we are as human beings. So much of what we do is attempted in our own power and designed for our own prestige. Well, we've come to the end of the story, and we've studied the raising of Lazarus simply as the story stands. But of all the miracles of Jesus, this one presents the greatest problem. Next week, we'll honestly deal with that problem. Goodbye, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for joining me today.